Okay, live on YouTube again. Uh, Maybe at a slightly different time from last week for some of you. I've learned some interesting things about daylight saving recently because I thought, oh, everybody has daylight saving. All the countries kind of have some kind of agreement to do it at the same time, but I was wrong. America is going to do it this weekend, and the UK and Europe, I think, did it last weekend, and Georgia does not do it at all. So here we have no daylight saving. So that's how it is. And I'm a little bit out of it this today actually because I cut my finger quite deeply yesterday just doing. I was making some chestnuts a couple of days back just because they're just in season here, and I like a few roast chestnuts. Put them in the oven, and they all exploded. I'd cut them a bit on the top, but they all exploded, these Georgian chestnuts. So I had to spend ages cleaning out the oven. And then I thought I'll do a bit better, got a better knife, but the knife slipped the next day and I really cut my finger quite deeply. And when I do that, I tend to get like, I don't know, it's some kind of like slight infection the next day. I've done it a couple of times. The other slightly weird thing is, it's been making me kind of think in therapist mode, is that I've cut the end of this middle finger on my left hand twice in the last 3 months, quite badly, and it's recovered once, and now it's got to recover again. But I'm like, part of me, when you've been a therapist, you're always trying to read like extra layers into anything that goes on, and I'm like, wow, is a part of me trying to like, get rid of the top of my middle finger, but I don't. Hopefully, that's not the case. Anyway, nice to be back, and I have enjoyed doing some of these live streams. I mean, it's not a lot of people like the old days, but I have a feeling like it's useful for people. It's useful, and it's nice to be able to support people. It's nice to be able to support people. This Sunday, I'm running a workshop here in Tbilisi called Power and Softness, where we're gonna, kind of interesting, because I've been out of running workshops for a few years, really, and I'm having to kind of learn some of the kind of spiels and talks about different concepts from body-based therapy. I really, I had kind of internalized, and now I realized I've kind of forgot a few of them. So I'm digging through loads of old like workshop schedules, stuff that I did in workshops when I trained as a therapist. We had to learn to write a schedule, and it was a super drag because I was doing a lot of very intense group therapy, and when you were on like one of the assisting staff, you had to, you never really slept. And then you had to write this bloody schedule, which used to drive me up the wall. But it was a good discipline because now I also write down stuff, and then I've got notes of useful things that worked when it comes to do a group. Let's take a check. Sol, hey Sol, hey man, hey, nice to see you again. It's really nice to connect. I have been keeping up with the bio every day, third week now. I'm feeling very happy in life. That's great, Olga Sandeepo. That's great. I saw you'd sent a few messages on my YouTube channel. Yeah, I've also been, I must admit, I was pretty bad with a guy who was doing a bit of promotional work for me, one of the students, and he kind of advised me to load stuff up onto Instagram as well, which I've been doing, but I haven't been chasing up any of the comments. So now I had to kind of go through a huge backlog of comments that had accumulated, and no doubt missed all sorts of marketing leads or whatever. But that is life. But I have to make a little bit more effort there. I like this approach, to offer something and to do it, openly. And, I always find I make money out of it, somewhere from the side, from here, there's not I don't find when you're a therapist a need to really go out there and sell, and it's kind of like a bit ethically inappropriate as well. Quite often I'm doing like, these 15-minute free calls that I offer, on Zoom. You can book them through my Calendly, and I do those, and then often it comes out like, well, maybe this approach isn't suitable for you, or whatever. It's kind of interesting to do that, and not to feel like, wow, I have to really sell to stay alive. It feels a bit, in some fields I think that's totally fine, but as a therapist it feels a bit strange trying to just kind of sell stuff and doing all this kind of very a bit, as I see it, robotic marketing techniques. I don't really like that so much. Okay, cool. Haha, I cannot resist doing that. I feel like some generosity from my prize also. Yeah, it's great to have positive comments and positive comments from you. Thank you. Question: for folks not doing the journey, is there a natural order of doing exercise over weeks and months? I mean, I mean, I haven't written out anything like that. In my first book on bioenergetics part one, the end of the book, there's like a 12 weeks of content, like, a daily workout, rather like the journey, that where you can go, you can do that, you can just have a workout a week for 12 weeks, that's there. Otherwise, it's all a bit random and free form. It's basically my YouTube channel is basically, I don't know, about 400 videos, which is just like, it's just 400 videos that's just on all sorts of topics, and every now and again I will weed some out or whatever. But it's kind of random, and you jump in, and there are numbers on some of them, or on some of the individual exercises and some of the workouts, which people have found useful. And I know the most popular videos are like the bow and arch follow along workout, and the rebirthing one, which I've redone a couple of times, and it still seems super popular. So I don't really have a natural order of doing things. I think when someone's kind of ready to commit to really get into bio, then that's the time to get the money together to do the journey. That's how I see it kind of manifesting. So it feels good what I do. I put a lot of content out, and that's and then people can jump in and have an experiment and see, get an experience and see how well it works for them. I guess in terms of natural order, I mean, the bow and arch are these kind of cornerstone postures, and I think to that I would add the kind of shoulders raised posture, which I find really, really, really useful myself. And particularly because dissociation from the body is such an issue these days, I think that's a great one to add in there as well. And then from there, you can go in all sorts of kind of different directions. It's the thing with bio is it's kind of interesting to contrast it with TRE, trauma release exercises, created by this chap David Bocelli a couple of decades ago. And as far as I know, and I don't know if he's ever said this, but he took a very small subset of bioenergetic exercises and kind of trademarked them and put them into this format, and offered people trainings in it and that kind of thing. But bio is kind of like this massive ocean of exercises, by no means all of which come from Alexander Lowen, who was really the chap in the West who invented the name bioenergetics. They're coming from all over. They come, quite a few I've heard sort of come from South America. Some people think the Inuits were doing it, who were I think, a Native American people. I'm not quite sure what bit of America they came from, but I think it was quite cold wherever it was. So maybe Alaska. I could be absolutely off for that. But there's a whole variety of exercises which I'm kind of grouping together, or which generally get grouped together as bioenergetics. Working with the body to create a psychological shift, basically. So, it's a massive kind of chaotic area. And certainly for people who are, strongly in the rigid type, should we say, that's challenging to deal with sometimes. They just want to format everything, get it in a thing. And I can be a bit like that as well. But finally, I like it, but it's a vast, chaotic, largely unregulated field, to be honest, because I don't know, there's just too much formatting of stuff. And I kind of like it that, some of these exercises are probably coming from Westerners, some are probably coming from shaman, God knows where, who have channeled them from something. It's just like this huge, great field. So hopefully that's vaguely useful. I'm kind of drifting a little bit there. Hi, Kristen. Hi. The bow and arch from the YouTube channel sold me on bio, led me to the journey. Ah, cool. Yeah, I mean, there's just such great exercises, because it's interesting, we think of exercise, in the context of running, keeping fit, going to the gym and that kind of thing. And then that moves and crosses over a little bit into yoga, the idea of flexibility, that kind of thing. But none of that stuff really crosses so far into psychology, where you really get, okay, we're going to use physical body posture, breath, and movement to start to create psychological change. So often, exercise can be a way of, dealing with stress. A lot of people, like to go running. You get this big kind of endorphin or whatever the brain chemical is hit at the end, and you feel really good. It de-stresses you massively. A lot of people go to the gym for the same effect, and also, to keep a bit limber, looking a bit buff or whatever. But a lot of people do yoga as well. They're looking to do something to make them feel good, but there's still quite a distance from that to bioenergetics, where you're using body movement, breath, feeling to actually create psychological change, not just to pump like feel good chemicals through your system. Or in the case of yoga, have a little bit of a experience of a kind of body meditation, body movement, stretching, and similarly with dance, you've got all these things which are kind of in a context somewhere over this side, and then bio is much further over here. And there's two ways in which it's useful to have a category where it's really like about your psychology. It's about who you are as a person. One is that you focus on that. It's like people go, I used to go to dance workshops before I started doing therapy. I thought, if I go to dance workshops, go to 5 rhythms, then I won't have to do therapy. I won't have to talk about all the horrible things that have happened in my life, and I won't have to really open up. And so I used to do that. And I know there's a lot of people who still do that and who still kind of self-medicate with fitness, with the gym, with yoga, these kind of things, with dance workshops. And on some level, so when you start to say, okay, I'm doing bioenergetics, there's a psychological thing. I'm even quite strong sometimes on people who keep going on about tension in the body. That's okay. But the real idea with psychology is you start to talk, okay, what does that mean for me? How does it relate to who I am as a human being? Is there a correlation? Bioenergetic, if you're going to talk about tension in the body, you might go to a physiotherapist or a massage therapist, But when you come into bio, then we're going to start talking about ourselves, our psychological structure, not just abstracting ourselves into this kind of world where we're trying to get a change without really admitting it or talking about it or dealing with the underlying issues. So there's that advantage, is one aspect to having something that's really in the psychological category. And the other aspect is that then you can focus on that. It's instead of having to do dance workshops when you're actually seeking to release trauma, you can actually go in there with people who hopefully are professional like myself and who can guide you usefully and, offer support. So I think it's really great to have this kind of body-based therapy or body-based psychology category. It has a lot of useful and biology, and it can be a good workout. Absolutely. I'm 61 and I still feel pretty fit and limber, and I've had quite a brutal life in certain ways, certainly in terms of alcohol consumption when I was younger and that kind of thing. I am seriously thinking about, I'm kind of completing this book now on Reiki and breathwork, which is like the 4th in my series on bioenergetics and Reiki and work, and then I'll move on to some more body-based therapy books, and I think bio has immense potential in the field for older men and women. By older, I mean kind of 45, 50 and up, because they may have been keeping fit by running, by going to the gym and stuff like that, and having a good life, keeping their life in good shape by that and being functional. But of course, around the age of 50, your body starts to you can't really push it like you used to, Like I watch this guy, David Goggins, occasionally. I haven't tuned into him recently, he's super motivational coach. And I'm a big fan, but he will push himself through incredible barriers. And there's a part of my mind says, yeah, mate, you try doing that when you're 60, and maybe he will be able to. Maybe he will be able to do that, But also, I see that when you start to hit that age, your knees, your hips, stuff starts to object. If you keep pushing from the mind physically, your body starts to push back in the sense that you start to, things deteriorate. These layers of meniscus in the knees or the cartilage around the ball in the hip, I know because I had to have one of my hips done, is like, it doesn't last forever. and you may have femoral impingement like myself, whatever, and so working with bioenergetics, it's potentially huge for men and women over 50. I think, especially in America, it could catch on massively because you keep yourself young and healthy. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to pound your joints. You just don't. You don't have to do that. And it actually works more on an emotional level. So you start to open up more. And even at 61, I'm still opening. Yesterday, I was listening to a piece of music. I was busy with some drama. I've been doing some bio, and I was just crying, and for a lot of even when I was half my age, I couldn't do that. I couldn't be so touched by things. My body couldn't get so open. So the more I kind of think about bio and where it fits in the great scheme of things, I think for the over 45s, over 50s, it's of huge potential in the States. It's absolutely untapped, the potential that's there, because not only do you get some level of workout and keep fit, you feel good about yourself, you move your energy, and you do keep healthy. And you do diminish your tendency to want to eat too much, all of this kind of stuff, and you don't need to pound your body. So that's been one of my recent kind of insights, and I'm starting to put it out a little bit in the hope that I don't know, some guy like, what's his name, who runs Athlete X on YouTube, the big fitness guy, when they get older, or some of these guys who do, like ripped at 50 and this kind of thing on YouTube, like they start to look at this, because I can see some of those guys are starting to get a bit battered, because you just can't do some of that shit when you're in your 50s. It's just, you're kind of pushing the edge, and the cartilage starts to go. So that's like, that's, just riffing off what you were saying, Sol, that's one of the things I really see the potential in bio. It could explode amongst the over 50s. It absolutely could. And also for, couples who've been in a relationship since they were 20 and they're now both 50 and it's all a bit stuck, it can really revitalize stuff. They can talk about much more stuff together, what was going on inside their life with their newfound openness and groundedness. They can improve their sex life again. And this kind of thing, it's like it has huge potential in this field. I think pushing it out to the 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, because when I started to do social media on YouTube, which of course is a lot of guys in their 20s, and there are people interested, and Elliot Hulse, is a massive YouTuber from back in the day, and still going, just started his podcast. And he was very popular with young men, late teenagers in their 20s. He talked about bio, got a lot of people into bio, but I see a bigger market being in men over 50, personally. Okay. How do you feel about vaccines? Not to get political, just coming out of purely diet mindset, more into psychological bio. I needed to join certain groups. I mean, I'm not a medical practitioner, so I don't give advice on that level. I got vaccinated from COVID because I already had COVID and didn't think it was that bad, And I just kind of thought, oh, it'll support the country. They're having this big patriotic drive in the UK to get everyone vaccinated. And I just thought, yeah, God, I can get vaccinated, So I got vaccinated personally. Yeah, I mean, the Western world's in a lot of chaos and movement now, so who knows where it's all going. I mean, I don't do so much for purely diet mindset personally. You're speaking about, if you looked at my diet, you'd probably be a bit horrified. I've been eating a lot of belly pork this week, which actually might be quite healthy, but more for me, the thing is not to eat too much, not to eat too much. I don't do the organic thing so much. Various ex-girlfriends would always get me into the organic thing, but it's not so much my thing personally. And I haven't really been convinced. I used to hang out, I used to live in a spiritual community. There was raw food conferences going on and stuff like that. And, I used to think some of the people looked pretty damn unhealthy, to be honest, so, and sometimes the desire, I mean, without being too controversial or therapeutic, sometimes the desire to be very pure about what you're putting in your body has a psychological root, in trauma, in early childhood, and it's like, it's good also to pay attention. It's good also to pay attention to that. So, no one's going to ask me about nutrition because it's not my thing. I don't really have a problem with vaccines. Of course, it's good if they're tested and all of that stuff. Actually, the second week was real hell for a few days, but I had your voice reminding me it is normal, and I kept going and came out of it. That's great, you know, because that is how it is, you know. It's like to go on any kind of a deep journey with ourselves, you know, we're going to have to face stuff. And our brain, our nervous system has repressed stuff into our body and created like a holding zone around that stuff, you know, and it's calibrated to stop us feeling it, basically, even though it's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz, because you know what would have been overwhelmingly horribly emotional at age 6 months in the womb, or age 6 months out of the womb, or age 2 years old, you know, no longer is when you're 18 or 20 or 30 or 40. It isn't. And we can feel what's inside. It may be intense, but we can hold it. But our nervous system is still calibrated to keep it down. And so, you know, it will create resistance to feeling. It will create that resistance. And I learned over the years to use resistance as a signpost. So even now, I'm doing my morning workout, and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do the next bit. You know, it's just a normal day. You know, and I can feel that resistance. And at some point, I'm like, that could be a signpost that something's going on. You know, if I'd be doing my bow and arch, I mean, I don't want to do the Reiki and breath work that I do in the middle. And then, okay, let's go and do it. And invariably, something deep will move. You know, something really starts to shift. You know, that I started to use a resistance as a signpost, and that's very, very useful. It is so useful to understand, you know, not on some kind of neurological level, but just like the nervous system and its job to try and protect us, this ongoing job to try and protect us, and that it's doing like a kind of overly zealous mother who refuses to admit that we have now grown up, really, you know, and is just frantically trying to keep cotton wool around us, you know. So you know, it's awesome that you can do that, you know. And sometimes we really are feeling like shit, you know, and it's just something we have to go through for a while because we've repressed that feeling. And in order to be whole again, we have to feel it. And then the trick is, you know, to recognize that I'm trying to push a feeling back down, and then to just be with the feeling. Because what will usually happen is the mind gets caught up in it, starts to project all sorts of horrors of what's going on, and starts to tell you you've got to change your state, and you've got to do this, or you need coffee, or you need to go out for a run, or whatever, you know, habitual things it's learned to avoid feeling. And then it's to say, okay, I'm just going to allow the feeling to just sit down and feel the body, or do some gentle belly breathing, and just allow whatever is there to come up and just be felt without any narratives being attached to it. And that's where the processing takes place. And this is, in a sense, such a simple thing. And it could absolutely revolutionize the whole of human existence on this planet. But the truth is, you know, it's like no one's really doing it. We're never taught this stuff. And, you know, we don't know it, and we just live in fear of all of this stuff inside, you know, and it's just how it is. But it's a shame, and I'm proud that you can go through that. Yeah, sometimes people message me and say that they hear my voice in their mind at strange times. When I used to work in the spiritual community and lead morning sessions, you know, I'd often say, you can do it. That was one of my things, you can do it. And then numerous people over the years have told me they were about to back out on something, and they heard my voice suddenly in their ear saying, no, you can do it. And they continue to move forward. So these things are a mystery, but it's all good. So at 58, I'm experiencing the benefits of bio, both physical and emotional level. Looking forward to your future offerings. Cool. That's it exactly. You know, I think bio has huge potential for people getting older, and, you know, demographically, the whole world is getting older, basically. You know, that's what I hear. You know, huge potential, masses of money to be made out there by some smart guy or smart woman who basically, you know, a smart person who basically just takes bio out to the older generation and creates some exercises, workouts, routines, and just does it with them, because it improves their capacity to enjoy life in the ways that old people like to enjoy. You know, being able to talk about things honestly, being able to be more real with their children and grandchildren, and this kind of thing. You know, it's got, as well as looking younger, feeling healthy, and still being able to do stuff. Okay, let's have a look. What else is going on? So it seems pretty quiet today, but it's quite nice to do these kind of 40, 45-minute live streams. I feel good about it. And I think maybe in a way, when I was running a lot of groups, I was talking more. I'd have to do theory hours and question and answer quite a lot. And I enjoyed that. It kept my brain kind of fresh with stuff. And since COVID, I haven't been running so many workshops, so I haven't been doing so much of that stuff. Just been on to a woman who runs a center, so she's got a whiteboard, dig up some of my brain, some of these old charts I used to draw of feelings and fear, anger, pain, love, and all this complex interaction of emotions and stuff like that. And people who say yes, people who say no, and what it tells you about their underlying stuff, all this. Because I've been also teaching bio quite a lot online the last few years, but I originally trained in group therapy, and then developed quite a lot of my own practice. So a lot of that's kind of gone by because you can't really do it online. So now I'm kind of running workshops again. I'm starting off with the bio, and I'm thinking, whoa, I know all this group therapy stuff I can be doing with these guys, which is also a bit more exciting than just standing in a circle doing your exercises, or at least it makes a welcome break to that. So there are times when I feel a lot during and after sessions, and periods of time when it seems nothing is happening. Do you have thoughts on these cycles? Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that that's just how it is, really. Often people get into bio because they randomly, come across it and have a big experience or a big release, and then they think, wow, I'm going to do more of this, which is natural. We tend to chase the same experience, and then it's very, very rare that it's really going to constantly deliver big releases. It's just not going to do that, basically. But if you stick with it over time, you get to another layer. Often there's layers, so it may go a bit quiet for a while, so to speak, and you stick with it and you stick with it, and then you start to get into a load of stuff, and often it's like, well, I've been waiting for 6 weeks for a load of stuff to come up, and now it's all come up, and I wish it would just fucking go away again. But then you're back in stuff, and I've certainly had that experience of kind of, especially in my years of group therapy, just feeling like, oh, well, I've been through loads of stuff and not much is happening now. I don't know if I should stick with this course. And then something else happens, and then I'm just in a whole ton of feelings again, and just really, really struggling, and just struggling to get through the day. And I can kind of remember the times when I just seem to be coasting, and it has this roller coaster kind of effect at times, and then it kind of smooths off, and then the roller coaster starts again. And of course, over time, particularly with the journey, you're also taking in theoretical information each month, which also stimulates the brain and gets it to look a little bit more inside. And some of these concepts and models that I introduced that I got from bio or from my time in group therapy, can be very handy as little ways that we can see into our own lives and see what's missing. I certainly came to a point where I could very easily see that I was still very oral and still very schizoid, where I really still needed to work on tensions around my neck, around my head, and between my shoulder blades. Those areas were still dug in. And even though I'd achieved quite a lot in terms of kind of lowering my center of gravity, being able to feel into my belly and operate from there, still most of the day I was functioning from here in this kind of control state, and it's like, so that what I'm trying to say is, developing extra levels of understanding of the human psyche on a personal level also motivates us to keep going and to become a bit more directional, to really say, okay, this is where I need to work now. When you've done like a year of the journey and maybe more or whatever, you will have much more understanding of who you are on a body-based psychological level and where you need to direct yourself, the character structures that are completely, kind of close to the surface that you want to work on, and it takes time. It just takes time, and you have to stick with it. Just yesterday, I noticed how I was in touch with some deep rage. It made me feel very much alive, and I wasn't afraid of rage. Yeah. You can. It's incredible what it brings up, and in many ways, anger is one of the tricky ones to work for the kind of, I'm not talking about you personally at all, but like the nice guy type, someone who's been a bit in the oral side and has been a bit of a nice guy. It's curiously enough, the hard men who are kind of used to anger generally find it easier to move towards vulnerability. It's not easy for them, but easier than it is for the nice guy to move towards the anger, and that's the challenge for either of them. There's just something about anger when you've been socialized and nice, and you know your life's not that good. You've read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and you think, my God, that's just totally me, or whatever. But when the anger comes up, when I've worked with nice guys, when the anger comes up, that's when we need a lot of support to keep going. And curiously enough, with the more tough guys who are more armored and rigid, they generally find it easier as they get older to get it. It may be an age function as well. They get older to get more towards the vulnerability and to appreciate being able to cry, to appreciate, not having everything under control. It's a curious phenomena, and certainly feeling okay with the sense of rage is challenging. It is challenging because it comes to a point sometimes where it's like your psyche is like, all your defenses are triggered because it's like, what the fuck, I could just fucking kill this person, or whatever, and that raw feeling of aggression and anger inside, the fire that comes up, to be with it in the body is challenging. Sometimes even you have to lay off process work a little bit to give it time to integrate, but that's just the depth of emotionality inside of us. And it also is, of course, very invigorating, like you say. It makes you really feel alive. You really feel like, whoa, I'm on the edge of my comfort zone here, and I'm fired up by something. It's very common. I wrote a post not long ago about, provocation and the endurer type, where the endurer, when put into a highly provocative situation, all this repressed anger starts to come up as they feel like some aggressive kind of provocateur is trying to push them. That all of their brain's defenses and learned defensive structures get kicked in, and they start to push back. But if you can stay with that, you can start to really release the endurer side, which is a major challenge. Okay, guys. Yeah, I have to do some more content on the old character types sometime. I know I had quite a phase of it for about a year. Also, when I was doing the Reichian character structure book, there's so much useful stuff in there, so much useful stuff. Now, I don't know, we seem to be moving into like a bit more of a recession kind of phase after, I don't know, not all my life because I'm quite old, but the last 30 years, always been sort of stable growth and more people getting interested in therapy. I'm a little bit like, wow, I don't think will that continue? Will that continue? Will people continue to get interested in therapy, or will they, will it be like, no, I need to survive a bit more? I was writing a post about that earlier today, or slightly tangential issue. Would you consider doing a Zoom event where we could share in the team, connect in a more personal way than text? Well, yeah. But, my time gets a bit, what I like about these, one thing is with filming stuff, people often ask me, can you film your live in-person events? And I have to say, it's like, no one is going to go deep when they're being filmed. It just doesn't really happen because the nervous system just kind of shuts off. In fact, even a one-day group, you need more like 2 or 3 days to get in there, really, for most people. But like, so I have kind of mixed feelings about it, doing Zoom events and live events and stuff like that, and having to hold that. I think if I was getting paid for it, then I would be interested. But just doing it as a thing, it's not so immediately appealing to me. If I'm honest, I hope that's not disappointing for you. And also generally, it's just not really possible. Sometimes with just a straight bio workout, you could film it, but as soon as you start to work on a deeper level, you can't really do it being filmed because I mean, maybe some people who've got strong narcissistic tendencies, which I can also have at times, would be up for kind of revealing all online. But for other people, it's not reality. This was always a thing when I was doing intense group therapeutic process. But people who had any marketing skills, because this is 20 years ago, and all that stuff was online marketing was just building, and social media and stuff. You can't, you can make a dance workshop or even a tantra group look really great online and encourage people to come. You can't do that with deep therapeutic process work because, and I know places have tried and tried, because no one is really going to go into themselves when you're on camera. It just won't happen because, we are concerned, to be in the moment. It's scary, you know. So it's always been one of those things that, in a sense, with the rise of the internet and the power of the internet, where a lot of deep therapeutic process work has now kind of died away. I mean, also, of course, the people leading it, from the 60s, 70s, 80s have all got older and are no longer doing that, or perhaps that they soften up their work as they get older, which is kind of a little bit how it goes when you're a therapist, you know. But it is a great shame that so much deep therapeutic process has just disappeared from the West. It's just gone, and it's been replaced by a lot of very cognitive stuff or a lot of very dancey stuff, none of which there's anything wrong with. But many people who've been around that scene for a while know full well that it's limited in its depth. It's limited. Cool. Maybe you could become a facilitator. I know it's not the same as doing it. It's perfectly guy. Here you, I feel like asking me to enjoy the sharing. No, it doesn't seem like that at all, and I'm very happy you're okay with my response. That's cool. It's totally fine to ask stuff. It's totally fine to ask stuff. Anyway, we're kind of approaching the 40-minute mark, so if anyone does have another question, then do feel free to just put it out. Do feel free. I'm like, what am I doing? Getting ready for, I don't know, winter, my brain, Christmas back in the UK, that kind of thing. Doing my own work. What I've really noticed recently is another layer of kind of belly energy, which is kind of curious because I used to work quite strongly with the belly, doing all sorts of thrusting and, these percussive inhale belly things, which I used to like. And that was very strong, evocative work, or teenager release, which is a little bit relating to the belly, and right to exist exercise. And recently what I've discovered is that I can just kind of very gently push my lower abdomen out and receive and let it come back, and just do it really softly, feeling into it. And it creates a huge amount of energy in my body. My upper body is like my upper body feels like this kind of crash helmet that's held on the top of me here, and then getting this energy in my belly. And it's so subtle, it's bizarre. I've not experienced anything like this before. And then it's like, then my body starts to shake and move, quite strongly. It's purely from the belly, just from these very subtle low abdominal movements. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I lie in bed and just do a little bit of it, and I fall asleep very quickly at the moment. Hey, yes, I'm in the process. Dealing with a person who's like a shadow over my head, Bio has been helping a lot. That's good. That's good. All these people who challenge us in life, and we always have people, if you're at all socially, challenge us, let's face it, It's like there's always something there for us. And sometimes, I don't want to look what that might be. I'm just in a lot of judgments and, backing it up and but it's like, there's always something there for us when that triggering is going on, and sometimes it's just to hold clearer lines with people and not sometimes to be so open to them, but to state boundaries. That has taken me a long time to learn, actually, a long time to learn how to be honest and just try and state a clear boundary. When I first started doing it, I would go over the top, It's like that, as is quite common with people when they're not used to stating boundaries or they've been very oral. They're asked something and they're in a kind of no, and, and then they feel bad afterwards and kind of end up apologizing or maybe doing the thing the person wanted anyway. It's kind of how it goes. But it's an art to just slowly learn to how to hold a clear boundary with someone. And it's what's so curious is when you are clear internally and you're not caught up in a charge, people can feel it and they don't really fuck with you. When I've helped people who are experiencing workplace bullying and similar as that, they invariably, I would hesitate to say everyone, but they invariably have this quite strong victim thing, for example. I'm not talking about you personally, but and they're carrying that around, and that's why the bullies are coming after them. It's not to do with their size or the gender or the workplace so much. That those can be factors. But it's also because somewhere inside they're not quite clear with their own anger, and when they are clear and they're like that, they can hold a very clear boundary, and no bully is going to fuck with them. Because bullies are scared people inside. So it's just me riffing a little bit off that. Me too. Cool. I mean, becoming a therapist, and being able to help people. I never had it as a vision. I never thought I was good enough. Basically, my old story. But then when I did so much therapist training just to heal myself, and got the feedback I could do it, and then I was living in a spiritual community where I could practice a lot as well. I'll show community. It's just so rewarding to lead people and groups through process work. It's just so rewarding, to see the change in people. I always used to like working with women. I mean, with guys as well, but just seeing them come out of this kind of social stigma that they've been impressed upon them and starting to, yeah, I can fucking do this shit. I can do it. I can change my life, and make it better. There's something so powerful and so nourishing about doing that kind of work. It really, I know everyone's focused on money these days, and that's kind of how it is, and it's natural in many ways. But I don't know any job that's as kind of nourishing ongoingly as working with people in a therapeutic capacity, especially with this kind of body work stuff. Helping people go through blocks, psychological or kind of psychophysical blocks in their body. Whether it's coming to allow themselves to be really angry or vulnerable, or whether it's just clearing something out of their throat, diaphragm, pelvis, whatever. It's just a very, very nourishing thing to do, I find, and it's an awesome kind of career to have. It's not, it's not quite in the mainstream, so it's a little bit on the outskirts, but nevertheless, I really think that working with people is such a phenomenal thing to do. It's like I'm often surprised there aren't more people, but you need to devote the time to your own, to clear as much stuff out as you can of your own, and do some training and come to a point where you're ready. You'll never be fully cleared out. You don't have to do that, but just to a point where ideally some other authority figure tells you you are now ready to go and work with people. Because it is awesome. It is the best. Anyway, guys, if anyone's got a last minute question, do feel free to put it out. Otherwise, I can let this stream go. I thought I was going to be a bit more out of it this week because, like I said, I cut my finger quite badly yesterday, stupidly as well. And when I do that, I always feel a bit out of it the next day. I think there's something goes in the bloodstream a little bit, and I do feel a bit out of it. But I actually kind of feel like I've been quite lively, so that's cool. Okay. Lovely to see you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Sandeepa. And lovely to see you all. Thanks for rocking up this week. And I'll be back next week. Check your time zones if you're in America, because I think the clocks are changing. Clocks in Georgia apparently don't change and haven't changed since 2004. So I have to just work it around other people a little bit. Cheers, guys. Speak to you later. Have a great week.